You have paused before, haven't you? Someone at a party leans in with the small talk question. Where are you from? No script, no practiced answer, just a small delay while your mind chooses the safest country to say, which country to name, which one they can pronounce. Which one won't lead to a longer story than the conversation has room for? You pick the safest option. You watch their face soften. They think they know you now. They don't. You did not come from one country. You came from the space between passports. You remember the smell of a market in the country you were born. You also remember the exact wallpaper in the apartment you moved to at 8. Both places are equally yours. Neither is fully home. If you spent your childhood moving a parent's contract, a father's uniform, a mother's calling, you grew up inside a place no map fully names, then crossed into an adulthood that keeps insisting geography be simple. You are not quite from where you were born. You are not quite from where your passport says. You are not quite from where you last lived. You were born between coordinates. And this reflection is about what that childhood built inside you, the strengths no one names, and the quiet ache no one else in the room fully understands. Before you understood what expat meant, you understood packing. You understood that a house is a temporary configuration of your belongings, that the crate arriving at the port is not moving day. It is the day home becomes portable. You learned early that furniture is not attached to floors, that some friendships come with expiration dates written into your parents' work permits, that the sentence we're leaving was a season, not an event. You turned suitcases into portable homes, bedrooms into departure lounges, goodbye into vocabulary. As a child, inside that arrangement, saying goodbye was not a trauma. It was routine. You learned to hold new people carefully, but never all the way. You knew at 6, at 9, at 12 that the girl next to you at lunch might be gone by Tuesday, or you might be. So you developed a specific muscle, the ability to feel warmth and distance at the same moment, to invest emotionally while quietly rehearsing the loss. Psychologists call this anticipatory grief. It is the mind grieving people while still holding them before the loss has technically happened. For most adults, it is a rare state reserved for illness or long farewells. For you, it was Tuesday afternoon. You also learned to leave. Before graduations, before weddings, before friendships had finished growing. You learned to read rooms faster than most children read books. The rules of politeness shifted with each move. In one country, you took your shoes off. In another, you kept them on. In one, you looked at elders directly. In another, you looked slightly away. Your nervous system logged the calibrations, and by the time you were 10, you could enter a house you had never seen before and know within a minute what to do with your hands. Cultural fluency became a language you spoke before you spoke any single language well. And there was distance, not loneliness, but the daily awareness that the people who understood your last year were not in the room. You did not have friends nearby. You had friends across oceans. That is where belonging lived. On time zones, you were always calculating in the back of your head. Then, just as you thought you understood how to move, the direction reversed. Your parents' assignment ended. The visa expired. The company recalled. And for the first time you were sent to the country your document said was yours. You called it home because everyone else did. You unpacked the crate for what was supposed to be the final time. And within a week, you understood something no one had prepared you for. This place did not know you either. You had learned to be foreign somewhere. You had never learned to be foreign at home. The cereal aisle was too long. The slang was wrong. Your accent made kids at school squint. Your references landed nowhere. When you mentioned the country, you had just left the one whose air still lived in your lungs. People said how exotic, and you understood that 6 years of walking those streets had just been reduced to a postcard in their minds. You learned that being from somewhere on paper does not make you from it in the mouth. You had spent a childhood learning to enter foreign rooms gracefully. Now you were failing at your own. That specific vertigo has a name. Researchers call it reverse culture shock. It is the disorientation of returning to a place that is supposed to be familiar and finding it more foreign than the foreign ones you had already decoded. It is worse than culture shock because there is no permission to feel it. You are supposed to be home. Everyone assumes you are relieved, but something quiet was happening inside. You were realizing that the map you carried in your head, the one where you had a country to return to, had been drawn wrong. There was no clean arrival. Home had become another place to translate. And you began in that year to hold a question you would carry into every room afterward. Where does someone go when everywhere is a little foreign? For most people, a sense of self is fed by belonging somewhere specific, a country of origin, a hometown you can visit, a first language you never had to study, a childhood photo of a house someone in the family still owns. But if you are a third culture kid, that recognition rarely arrives whole. You were called by the nationality of your passport, and yet you never felt native to it. You were called by the country where you spent the most years, and yet you were the foreign kid there too. Too foreign at home, too local abroad. So you learned to inhabit categories loosely the way you inhabited houses, carefully, respectfully, never assuming the walls were yours. Psychologically, this produces a state researchers call cultural marginality. Not marginal in the pejorative sense. Marginal as in existing on the edge of multiple centers, belonging fully to none. You recognize all sides. You understand the pride of citizens who grew up under one flag. You also understand the fluency of people who move through many. But recognizing is not the same as originating. And over years, a specific self-perception settles in you. I fit everywhere, but I come from nowhere. It is why nationality debates felt strangely external to you. Immigration policy, cultural pride, the question of who counts as native, you followed the arguments, you understood their weight, and still none of them was naming you. There is a psychological strength that lives in that position. Cultural flexibility, emotional agility, comfort with strangers. But there is also a quiet expense. Your sense of self anchors more softly than most. Not many people can mirror the specific version of childhood you carry back to you. So you built continuity inside yourself out of pieces geography never intended to fit together. Your childhood came in chapters, but the chapters were not decided by you. They were decided by contracts, evacuations, elections, in countries you had no vote in. The first fracture was the move you did not choose. The one that happened at 14 or 15, at the age when a person is still stitching themselves together, still gathering the answer to who they are becoming. You had just found the group, the corridor jokes, the friend who understood your specific weirdness. And then your father came home with news, and within a month you were on a plane, and by the next semester, those people were photographs. For some of you, the shock was sharper. A country turned. Unrest arrived. Embassies called. You left in 12 hours with a suitcase and the house you grew up in, kept your books on the shelves you would never see again. Nothing about your inner world had prepared you for how quickly a place can close. The message was immediate and physical. Home is a permission that can be revoked overnight. Then in adulthood, the pattern kept repeating in slower forms. University scattered your international school friends across 6 continents. Careers pulled you to yet another country. Relationships bent to time zones. Some of you inherited what your parents did. You found yourself moving for work, for love, for opportunity, and each time you thought this one might last. Each time, the current bent again. Researchers who study displaced children describe this as unresolved grief. It is mourning that never gets scheduled because the losses accumulate faster than the calendar can accommodate them. You did not lose one place. You lost a chain of them, each incomplete, each still living inside people you can no longer easily reach. The world did not fail you dramatically. It simply kept moving underfoot, and you learned to expect that stability when it arrived would be provisional. By adulthood, the people who understood your specific version of childhood are scattered across the earth. The girl who sat next to you in 7th grade lives in Auckland now. The boy who taught you how to swear in 3 languages is in Berlin. The friend who understood why you called your grandmother by a title in a language your partner does not speak is somewhere between Toronto and Seoul. You maintain these friendships across oceans as a kind of second job, not because you are unusually devoted, but because these are the only people who make you feel entirely legible, and that is the quiet wound. Nowhere allows you to be all of yourself at once. The country you live in reads part of you. The country you were raised in reads another part. The country your parents come from reads yet another. Full recognition happens only in fragments across continents and group chats that never quite live in one time zone. Researchers who study this call it chronic ambiguous loss. The pain does not resolve because the loss does not complete. Your community exists. It is simply always too far away to gather in one room, a family of belonging permanently offshore. Then adulthood asks you to build a home. And you find yourself standing beside someone whose relationship to place is nothing like yours. A partner who can drive to their childhood bedroom in an afternoon. A partner whose grandmother lives in the same town where their mother was born. A partner for whom the question, "Where are you from?" has one answer delivered without pause. You love them. You also study them quietly the way you once studied countries. You are trying to understand how a person becomes so certain of their coordinates. You try to explain your relationship to home, and the conversation drifts sideways. You mean you don't have a hometown, they ask, and you watch them try to picture it? You realize that the vocabulary you need does not exist in their emotional register. It is not their fault. It is that the concept has never had to enter their lives. If children come, a new question arrives. You want them to have what you did not: continuity, one bedroom that stays theirs, friends who know them across a full decade, a corner of a city they can claim as theirs without having to explain the claim. So you settle. You resist your own drift. You put down what your nervous system does not fully believe in. But another fear rises. What if you give them so much continuity that they become the people you could never fully understand as a child? The ones with one home, one language, one story. You raise them across your own contradiction. You give them permanence. And you also teach them to sit next to strangers on planes without fear. You parent from a country you built inside yourself, made of pieces no atlas confirms. Inside offices, cultural difference tends to sit beneath the meeting rather than on top of it. To one edge of the table, co-workers whose entire professional life was formed inside one country, one register of politeness, one shared operating culture. To the other, distributed teams, remote colleagues, clients, whose meaning is embedded in norms you have to read before you can respond to them, and you stand somewhere in the middle, not by title, by reflex. You know when American directness is going to land as rudeness in a Tokyo meeting. You know when French disagreement is affection and when it is not. You know which silences are agreement and which are trouble waiting. This is not a skill you rehearsed. It is your nervous system, trained on 20 years of reading rooms whose rules kept changing. Researchers name this cultural intelligence, sometimes shortened to CQ. It is the capacity to function fluidly across cultural contexts. For most professionals, CQ is a competency to be developed. For you, it is a residue. Transition itself was your instructor. And without being asked, you slide into the translator role on almost any team you join. Meetings settle when you rephrase. Emails soften when you draft them. Cross-border projects survive because someone on the team hears both sides of a misunderstanding before it hardens. The work is invisible when it works. It is only visible when a channel fails, and everyone looks around for the person who was quietly holding the middle. That person so often was you. But translation has a cost that does not appear on any performance review. There is a specific fatigue that comes from never having a room where you can drop the calibration. Even in rooms you love with your partner, your closest friend, your own family. Some part of you is still reading, still adjusting, still translating between the version of yourself that grew up in one country and the version that grew up in another. You also carry a grief without a country to mourn to. When something is lost, a grandmother in a place you have not lived in for decades, a friend from an old international school who died young, the sadness has no cultural container. Your colleagues offer condolences shaped by their own traditions of grieving, and you receive them, and you do not correct anyone because there is no shorter way to explain. Researchers call this hidden diversity. It is the reality that a person can carry cross-cultural complexity that is entirely invisible to those around them. Support flows through you. You are the one who understands both sides. You are the one people call for language help, for family navigation, for weddings that need bilingual seating charts. Exhaustion here is less about workload than about location. You occupy a middle place by default, and pressure crosses through you from every direction. And you hold rooms together for people who never see the holding. You are the translator, the interpreter of borders, the quiet handler of everyone else's crossings. But something you carry is becoming rare. Not just plural passports. Lived memory of what it means to build identity without a fixed shore. You know that a person can be loyal to many places without diluting the loyalty. You know that home can be a set of coordinates carried inside a person, not stamped into paper. As borders become more contested and belonging becomes louder and more defended, your patience with plural belonging becomes something the world needs and cannot easily manufacture. You are the shape of a life that could not have been shaped by one country. Your fluency in multiple homes is not a lack. It is evidence that identity can hold plural without breaking. If you recognize yourself in this drift between shores, you are not lost. You are the current itself. You are a country in one person. If this reflection landed somewhere in you, this may be a channel to keep. It looks quietly at how identity takes shape in the spaces between shores, the ones the world rarely marks on any map. You can subscribe if you would like to continue these deeper reflections together. And I would especially like to know something from you. If you grew up as a third culture kid, what is the country you name when someone asks versus the country you would name if you had 30 extra seconds to answer honestly? Share it in the comments. Let us gather the maps we carry inside ourselves. The ones no atlas confirms, the ones only people like us can read. Thank you for watching.